Alrighty, here we go. I'm just gonna go ahead and record this and do it that way. That way, this doesn't go on for like half an hour. But this is a real question I have. Did the beliefs switch between the right and the left in the United States? Let me go ahead and add that little, flip in the US. Now, I do have to ask this question because I think that there are some fundamental issues that have moved people that have kind of skewed things around, at least in my opinion. There was a time when the right wing in general, was a big fan of patriotism and, we love our country, this and that. And, imperialism is good, this and that. But I think that we have seen a shift. It's the same thing with, combating corruption, right? Of course, we saw Gavin Newsom lose, or excuse me, I wish he lost, no, but he remains governor. It appears that people were so afraid of Larry Elder that that more Dems showed up than Republicans. Now, in general, I think that Republicans, I think rightfully so, Republican voters have given up on voting and electoralism, which in a lot of ways was kind of a left-wing thing. This is why Lenin wrote books like, what the fuck is that book called? Left-wing Communism and Infantile Disorder, right? And basically, of course, Vosh has used this as a way to defend the idea of, well, actually voting, Lenin supported voting, this and that. And he was so disingenuous about it. And it was alleged that people basically just, gave him, certain quotes and whatnot in the first place. But anywho, beyond that, is that now, broadly speaking, the mainstream left supports voting, and even like the MLs and whatnot to a point, who want to try to be relevant, or at least somewhat relevant, support voting. They support electoralism, which of course people think that freedom, like I say, Americans are retarded. I will admit it, being an American. That's why I stay in this country, because everyone else would just say, you're retarded. You get to, you get to sit in the corner and play with string. That's what you get to do, But in all seriousness, though, I think that, at least in my opinion, these things switched. And I think that in general, the left, quote unquote, cares more about the system than the right wing does. Now, of course, a lot of that comes from the 2020 election of Trump and the voter fraud. Of course, they'll say, oh, it was the most secure election in history, or yada yada yada, whatever, right? And because they saw the disillusionment of it, they have seen COVID-19 destroy a lot of businesses. They have seen a lot of folks die and everything else, right? So they feel disappointed. And so this is why many right-wing folks and dissidents or whatever will say, yeah, I'm a base Taliban, and I'll say it as well. There was a time maybe when I, was somewhat Islamophobic or whatever, because that was just the typical Republican thing to do. But I think that some of it is edginess. Some of it is they genuinely believe that, yeah, Putin and Assad are better, which, subjectively speaking, or even objectively, depending, they are. Putin and Assad are better leaders than Joe Biden, Joe Biden is walking around aimlessly, just kind of just doesn't want to answer the questions. We'll have, of course, Blinken, who will, change the script every 5 minutes or so. You've got Jen Psaki, of course, all the faces of the Biden administration. But people will say they're not Trump. Trumpism is still alive. They'll say that about, Gavin Newsom as well. Gavin Newsom himself was saying, oh, well, Trumpism is still alive. We have to be aware of it. To me, I think Trumpism will lead to just a general disillusionment of Republicans, in my opinion. There are plenty of these so-called, neocon never Trumpers out there. But the thing is, though, those that they have money. And they're already fairly secure in this current system. That's why they continue to support it. And they, the Lincoln Project and all that shit. Of course, one of them turned out to be a pedophile, but that's a whole other story. But the fact is, though, is in many ways, they have become, the left, of course, used to be the big anti-America group. And now, of course, many folks are like, well, actually, Democrats are better and this and that. Oh, we have to defend the Capitol, and, you better wear your mask, and you better put on, you better have that vaccine. To me, it's like, I thought you were fighting the system. Now, of course, some of this is just, just being obstinate and saying, well, we don't want to join, I guess maybe it's just as simple as it's not cool to be, a supporter of Assad and supporter of other regimes. Maybe it's not cool. Maybe it's because now, some Republicans and, of course, like I said, Wignats to a point have always been this way, but it's like maybe they were just like, it's not cool anymore. So now we're just going to support the U.S. Is it that simple? It took me 7 minutes to realize it, but is it that simple? That people simply, so-called mainstream left-wing people are just like, let's just go ahead and support this system. Let's go ahead and say it was an insurrection on January 6th, even though, we secretly wanted to do what they did. But, I don't know. It's now, of course, like I say, these things will shift back and forth, and these things get tossed around more than a basketball. But I think it's interesting to see that at this current time, many mainstream lefties are far more patriotic about the United States than, right-leaning people. Generally speaking, like I say. I think it's just, like I say, and of course, you see, of course, for example, the Wignats have gone all in on this. They're just like, yeah, we don't care about white people in America. We just want Aryans. So we want you to fight. And if you don't fight, fuck you, you're going to die. This sort of like, is pretty much just the Nero mandate sort of shit that Hitler did, right? Where it's just like, well, Germany didn't deserve to, they didn't deserve to live. So they all get to perish, that sort of thing, right? And I guess that's that's kind of the basis of, this is why white nationalism really isn't a thing in the U.S. There are folks who will respond to it, and they can make their funny memes, but ultimately they're not going to do anything. Generally speaking, I don't think they will. Because I think anybody within these circles has realized that, Order of the Nine Arrows or the New Justice Party or whomever else, there's a lot of edgy folks out there who talk shit. A lot of the edgy I'm a real pagan type of shit. Yeah, those LARPers exist. But me personally, I don't think they have the balls to really do anything. That's the whole thing. I mean, I think in many ways, the left has come to defend people like, General Mark Milley against Trump or whatever the case may be. Whereas Republicans are like, yeah, he's bad. I think it's coming to that point where it's like, well, actually, we need to take on China and stuff like that. We need to take on Iran. Whereas many, like I say, I'm speaking in broad strokes. I know people are going to say, actually, it's not really like that. I know. But regardless, I think that, I think it's just interesting to see this shift. Now, like I say, it can shift back fairly easily. It can, but I think that a lot of the edgy left-wing folks who are like, yeah, fuck the police, this and that. A lot of that is drowned out by mainstream folks who want to, be bird dogs for the Democrats, to say, yeah, we, vote Democrat to keep Republicans out. What are the Democrats offering me? Well, I happened to be in this chat yesterday where they were talking about, Newsom and all that business. I kept asking the question. It's like, do you think that, Gavin Newsom is good? Well, he's not good, but he's good with COVID. And more Democrats are coming out to vote. I mean, to me, voting is silly, like I say. And I think voting can only go so far. I think that the fact is, though, is that Democrats have a fair amount of power. And yet, they're not doing anything, And they would rather blame it on Kristen Sinema or Joe Manchin. They'll say, these two people are the bad ones. They're the bad ones. What about, AOC? I don't even want to get into the dress bullshit, but I'll briefly mention it here and then I'll move on. But the whole dress BS, the whole tax the rich thing, of course, designed by a millionaire or somebody, designed by somebody who's married to a millionaire. I guess that's okay. I guess. I don't know. We see a system that is on the brink, on the verge. And I think it goes to show once again, though, that the left in general simply wants reformism. That's the mainstream opinion anyway. Yeah, there are edgy MLs out there who are like, yeah, let's get the proletariat and, we're going to have a revolution and we're going to get the POC on our side. Yeah, those LARPers do exist. But the thing is, though, they have no real power. They have no real influence. Infrared Haas has no real influence. Black Guard has no real influence. I mean, obviously, people like Non-Compete have no real influence in politics. But of course, if you ask people point blank, well, what do you think about Gavin Newsom? Well, he's not perfect, but so yeah. Like I said, this is a random rant, but I think it's interesting to see this shift. Probably has happened for more than, but I think that more dissident ideas have become mainstreamed, I think. Like I say, the support for the Taliban, or at least in some ways, at least their trad Islamic, or their Islamic, or I'll just say Sharia law. Sharia, which does mean Islamic law. And their respect for keeping women in their place and being trad as fuck, Now, of course, Christians would openly say, well, Islam is our enemy, this and that, but I think they admire the fact that, the Taliban has achieved this while in the U.S. they're continuing to lose this battle. I think that's the whole thing, right? You find allies where you can. I think that's part of it. You find the allies where you can. You see Putin is trad, even though, of course, people say, oh, but he works with Israel, or, oh, this. I know. He's not perfect, but he is who he is, right? And I think it's, like I say, that's how I feel anyway. This can easily change, as fortunes change for one side or the other, broadly speaking. But, you know what I mean? It's just kind of, it's interesting to say the least to see these shifts in, these changes of sea direction, if you will. Anywho, I think that's all I got. I'll wrap this up before the 15-minute mark. So see you later. Goodbye.